I'm Leslie Chapman Henderson, President and CEO of FLASH, the nonprofit Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, and I will be your host today for our podcast, Strong Homes, Safe Families, where we help you prepare for disasters of all kinds. During our show, we're going to share tips, information, and interviews so you can protect your family and your home before Mother Nature heads your way. Today, we're talking about getting ready for hurricane season with an emphasis on financial security, and that means insurance. I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Amanda Chase, who's an agent with State Farm Insurance Company in Winter Park, Florida. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you for having me, Leslie. I'm excited to join your podcast and help your listeners.
Well, it's great to have you here. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career at State Farm? Have you always been an agent?
No, actually, I started with State Farm right out of college. I was very fortunate and blessed to get on with such a great company as my first career. I actually started my career with State Farm's catastrophe team. So I had the privilege of traveling all over the country to help process claims in and around catastrophic events. Hailstorms, windstorms, and of course, our ever scary hurricanes. So at a very young age, I really got to experience the devastation and the complexities that can come with a significant storm. It was interesting. I had spent months and months learning insurance and the policy and coverages and how to estimate rebuilding a home. But for someone that had never actually owned a home, to see firsthand what can happen in a hurricane and how that plays out in real life was very sobering. And it was actually those experiences as a catastrophe adjuster that really gave me the certainty and excitement to become a State Farm agent, because I had a real firsthand experience on State Farm's delivering that promise when people need it. So if I were to sell this product, a home insurance policy or other insurance policies, really knowing how meaningful that was to deliver that promise when people needed it the most.
Would you say that that is what really became the cornerstone of your passion for customer education?
Most definitely. I mean, there's nothing like really seeing that play out in real life. And, in that role, we were the connection of delivering the promise of what people buy when they buy insurance and seeing how critical it was that the policy that was sold and the coverages that were chosen, deductibles, all of that really comes to fruition when something happens like a hurricane. And I just felt passionate from that it would be so rewarding to be an agent and really have those conversations with customers and let them tailor their policies to protect them in the way that was most important to them.
That fits so beautifully with what we're doing right now, because we're trying to help people get ready for hurricane season. And the way we do that is through our program called Hurricane Strong. And of course, State Farm is one of our national sponsors. And together we've created 5 steps or 5 prep steps to help everyone get hurricane strong. The first one deals with personal safety. The next deals with disaster readiness and supplies, kits, etc. The third, which is right here where you are, is financial security. And as I said before, that means insurance. The fourth is strengthening your home. And then the fifth is community service. So we want to talk with you about how is it that we can use insurance and what are the things we can be doing before the season to ensure that we have the money that we need to repair, recover, and to respond when hurricanes come, to our hometown. So what is the best way to get ready ahead of hurricane season in terms of financial security?
Well, I believe the most important and most valuable thing you can do in regards to the financial security is to have an annual or policy renewal insurance checkup, to take the time to review the coverages and the choices that you have made in your policy and have a meaningful conversation with someone that can guide you and answer any questions or concerns that you might have, as well as advise you maybe some of the areas that you might have a gap in coverage or might want to consider other options.
So can you walk me through some of the steps of an insurance checkup? Because, it's probably not something everybody understands all the different, terms in their policy. So can we tackle those one at a time?
I would love to do that. In fact, we call all of our policyholders at their renewal to invite them in for an insurance checkup. And for new customers, or certainly in the beginning of my career, people weren't always necessarily excited or sure about what we were calling to ask. But over the years, my client base has really come to appreciate that review. And we get thanked always as they're leaving what a beneficial time spent it was. So yeah, it's not something that everybody understands, but I think it is well worth the time. We like to cover a myriad of things. We really, first and foremost, want to just take a moment, slow time down just long enough to make sure that the coverage that we have in place, both we and the client feel is sufficient. Everything from how much their home is insured for, have they made any changes, have they renovated, updated a bathroom or a kitchen and failed to let us know, really keeping that replacement cost coverage on the home and dwelling and other options up to speed with where they are. We also really like to educate them on their deductibles and how that works. The deductible is an interesting thing during hurricane force. Most of the policies have what we call an everyday deductible, or deductible for things other than hurricane. And the majority of policyholders in Florida have a separate hurricane deductible. And that hurricane deductible kicks in during hurricane force winds. State Farm actually recently allowed us to carry an all peril deductible. So the client has the option to have just one deductible and not a separate hurricane deductible. But either way, it's very important that we feel the client understands what their out-of-pocket deductible would be if they had damage during a hurricane, and that could be from any type of damage during those hurricane force winds. So God forbid it was a fire or lightning damage. If it's during that hurricane force winds period of time, that is the deductible in play.
Can you put that in context? If my home is insured for $200,000, because it's just the home, not the land, right?
Correct.
And I have a hurricane deductible, how would that work? What kind of percent is it? It's a percentage, correct?
Most often, yes. We commonly see 2%. There are higher options, not that I would necessarily recommend that. But if your home was $200,000 and you had a 2% hurricane deductible, then your deductible during a hurricane loss would be $4,000.
That's the amount that I would need to be ready to pay out of pocket myself, right?
Yes. And a lot of clients ask us, well, do I have to pay you? And no, typically an insurance company is going to calculate up the cost for repair or replacement and subtract any deductible from the payout that is given.
They would then pivot to the person doing the repair work and meet that gap.
Yes. Yes.
Very good. And so I can see why that is one of the most important things to understand, especially if there's an impact on the cost of the policy if the deductible goes up, correct?
Correct. So the lower the deductible, typically the higher the premium, higher the deductible, the lower the premium. But again, I think that's something that is important to review every year, because people have feelings that might vary from year to year on what they have in preparation for that type of out-of-pocket expense, or whether they've made improvements to the home and they feel a little less vulnerable, such as maybe they have a new roof and they feel like, well, I don't know that I'm as likely to have damage. So it can be very personal, and I think it's a great way to customize your choices based on your own personal feelings and budget, and find the right balance for you and your family.
Absolutely, because the short-term savings of a higher deductible may be nice, but if the long-term impact is that you don't have adequate funds to pay for your repairs,
yes,
then that's probably a too high, literally too high of a price to pay. So that elasticity is really critical, and it's great. The idea of an annual checkup, that's why we recommend it, is because you've pointed out this situation can change year to year. Absolutely. And, they may have had a child just enter college. And so we all know, as those who have put our kids through college, there's very little extra about when that happens. So that's really, really helpful information. So what kind of exclusions or other kinds of things on an insurance checkup do you generally talk about? What are some things for people to be aware of?
The most important thing when we talk about exclusions is actually trying to educate them as to what the policy pays and what things it doesn't cover. Obviously, one of the most common questions and areas of clarity that we like to provide is the difference between wind-driven rain that is covered under a homeowner policy for hurricane damage versus rising water, which is traditionally covered under a flood policy. And so that comes up quite frequently, and it's a great chance for us to explain that a homeowner policy does not cover flood damage. Flood is a separate policy, oftentimes brokered through FEMA or the National Flood Insurance Program, but their policy would cover any wind-driven rain. So any rain or water damage that would occur during hurricane winds, as long as it wasn't the rising water. And then we talk about flood these days. Flood insurance is also a very personal decision. Many people have felt like flood insurance was not necessary if they weren't in a flood zone. But we've certainly seen over the last several years how areas that have never flooded have flooded recently. And just giving the customer a chance to understand the difference and talk about their home and their worries, or maybe they're not concerned, but again, having a meaningful time to make that decision intentionally. We try to share with people how reasonable flood insurance is these days. And if that would give them a greater peace of mind, then we certainly recommend it.
That's such an important conversation about flood insurance, because isn't there also a lead time requirement for purchase of flood insurance?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. There's a waiting period of a minimum of 30 days. So much like everything else, preparation and being thoughtful about it ahead of time is actually critical with flood insurance.
Well, and I can imagine that this is all part of the insurance checkup in eliminating surprises. Everything we've talked about so far, it just sounds like incredibly helpful for people to know all this way before the hurricane comes. What about things that they can do, looking at your policy and the importance of having a financial security mechanism like insurance? Are there mitigation or other kinds of steps that people can take that will provide some incentives or discounts or credits against the policy costs?
Yes, and that's exciting these days, especially. One of the big discounts that we see throughout the state, certainly is very popular here in Central Florida as well, is called wind mitigation. And that's a very sizable discount that is available for homes that meet the newer building codes, primarily in the area of prevention of wind damage, or certainly with a new roof. So as we have experienced hurricane situations over the years, we've gotten to be incredibly knowledgeable about what will prevent or make a home safer. And I know that's one of the things you guys do a great job of educating. But a new roof is able to withstand higher hurricane force winds because of the code changes we've made. So there is a program that will provide a very beneficial discount for meeting those wind mitigation criteria. Other things like an alarm system, maybe updated utility, heating and cooling, plumbing and electrical, things that prevent some of the typical losses that we see. So just having a chance to sit down and go through any way to capitalize on discounts that you might be eligible for, as well as being knowledgeable about things that would be helpful to you, but also save you money on your home insurance policy. And then last but not least, I know State Farm offers a multi-line discount when you have both your home and your auto insurance. So that's also nice.
Those are very helpful things. I know I recently got a new roof, and the kinds of things that will qualify me, because I'm a Florida resident as well, on the roof are the type of shingle, if it's a high wind shingle, which most places it is very common now, wasn't always, but now, as you mentioned, because of code changes, and then the way that the roof deck is attached and the number of nails, and then having that secondary water barrier, or what they call a sealed roof deck, in case, because the shingles are going to come away at a certain wind speed no matter what you do. when they do, if you have that secondary layer in place, that sealed roof deck, then you can keep the water from sheeting into your attic and eventually into your house. So that is a discount that is much deserved because it does prevent damage. As we know, if the roof goes, so goes the home. So
Yeah.
those kinds of things go from research to policy and policy into practice. And then those savings inure to the homeowner, right? On the discounts, they receive them every year, correct?
Yes. And the customers love that because it's obviously something on their mind and something that they might be planning to do on their own. And to find out that there's a significant savings for preparing and having a newer roof is kind of a win-win.
That is. And I know you're in Central Florida, but along the coastlines of Florida, having hurricane shutters or other types of opening protection, I think add additional discounts and credits and considerations as well.
Yes, and significant. So yeah, I think some of the coastal areas, really some of those preventative measures can really impact the overall wind mitigation savings as well as protect your home.
Yeah, because one of the things, of course, that we are dealing with this year, in addition to the hurricane, is the concern. And we did a small research effort before the season started. We did a consumer survey and we asked people if they were intending to get ready this year. And we also talked to them a little bit about COVID-19. And we tracked an increased interest in getting prepared, in large part due to the desire to be able to shelter at home safely, and also in order to be socially distant, and some concerns over the ability to get supplies at the last minute and avoid the rush. So while we're still dealing with emerging out from under the different lockdowns from COVID-19, people are very aware of the need to be ready for hurricane season because we can't stop the weather no matter what we do. So can we talk a little bit about some customers or some success stories, or just any story on the other side of an event? I know that Irma affected the area where you are, Amanda, and any kind of post-event stories of customers that you helped with the checkup?
I had a client who had come in for an insurance review checkup a couple months before Irma hit. And he called me after the storm and he said, I don't know whether I should thank you or let you know how much trouble you are in. I think I'm getting elected to the head of my homeowners association because I was so knowledgeable for our community that was so impacted by Irma. His neighborhood was without power for several weeks and did have a lot of significant wind and tree damage. And he said, the time we spent when I came in and reviewed my policy, talking about what my options were, how I could take measures to mitigate future damage, how to keep receipts for any work that I had completed, to take photos and have those ready, be able to, some of the things I had done to prepare in advance and have my policy with me, how I understood the hurricane deductible. He said it before I knew it, all the neighborhood was coming to my house for the answers to questions. And now I'm getting elected to the head of my homeowners association. But what I think is that kind of preparation is really not just extremely helpful for truly being prepared and having kind of a plan, but really alleviating anxiety and stress at a time when there are things out of your control and there are difficult, stressful things to deal with. But if you've had an opportunity to sit down and become knowledgeable and have the answers to your questions ahead of time, I believe that goes a long way in smoothing out what is a trying time for anyone.
That is so interesting. And it sounds like somebody, if you ever needed any more help at the office, you probably have a good recruit. So
yes.
One quick question about power outage. There's a coverage for power outage that a lot of people don't know about related to the refrigerator. Can you talk a little bit about food spoilage?
There is often a reimbursement up to a certain limit for food spoilage. And the most important thing is to just document that. So going ahead and taking some photos and maybe just jotting down a list of any food items that are destroyed through the loss of power. And that can be handled under your claim, along with any damage to the structure of your home or any personal property. We often have loss of use coverage too. So if someone's home is uninhabitable due to storm damage, policies will pay a certain amount for them to live elsewhere, such as an extended stay, or if they needed to live in a hotel for a period of time, or even, we do see very significant claims where a home truly is uninhabitable and will take a long time to repair. There's coverage for that loss of use, the inability to live in your own home.
Now, on the food spoilage, is there a deductible applied to that?
There is not.
That's the secret sauce right there. Pardon
Yes.
the food pun, but that is something I think that we've seen in post-storm events. People think a deductible applies and they find out later, oh my goodness, I could have had a claim, at least because those food costs, they really can climb. This is just amazing and very, very helpful information, Amanda, because I think now, while it's calm, this gives people something to think about, especially reminders about things like flood insurance, and really considering whether or not your policy has everything in it that you need to recover and to bounce back. From your experience, both as a catastrophe claims adjuster and also as an agent, is there any one kind of overriding message that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
It is extremely helpful for someone to just have a plan. And we've experienced now more than ever what we're going through with the coronavirus, that their uncertainty and things that have never happened before can happen. And situations like that create a tremendous amount of fear. And fear can be debilitating and really exacerbate what people are struggling to go through anyway. Taking the time to just have a plan and feeling confident that you know kind of the steps that you would take, who you would reach out to, you feeling confident that you actually have an advocate or a resource for the things that you might be faced with, that your family has prepared and has the coverage in place, and knows the knows the answers to the questions. Sometimes I think what makes it worse is really not knowing, what is my deductible? How much could this cost? How much would I be out of pocket? Can actually be worse than the answer, just that fear of the unknown. And so controlling as many of the controllables as we can, knowing that we might face several that are out of our control, will really bring a peace of mind and a confidence that we can get through this. So I would just say that carve out a little bit of time to prepare, feel confident, feel informed, have a chance to make decisions, and then feel like you have the tools to protect yourself, or certainly to maximize the coverage that you've bought, will help you feel more at ease that you're ready to tackle what might come our way.
If everyone that hears this follows those instructions, we're going to have a lot more people ready. Hopefully they won't need to be, but it'll be very, very helpful. So I want to thank you so much, Amanda Chase of State Farm Insurance, for being here and helping our listeners of Strong Homes, Safe Families get ready for hurricane season. Please visit us at hurricanestrong.org to access our free checklists and information about all the many affordable do-it-yourself preps you can use to protect your family and home, especially having your annual insurance review. Our content's available in English and Spanish, and you can call us toll-free at 877-221-SAFE. That's 877-221-7233, or email us at info@flash.org. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, share, and provide a review for our podcast on iTunes. Until next time.